Welcome to the Daily Objective. It is day 100 of a war that really should have not taken 100 days, but it doesn't look like it's going to be over anytime soon unless the only way it could be over is if Israel throws in the towel. And I have reason to believe that that is what's happening here. So I'm joined by the returning Mark Pellegrino. Mark, how's it going?
You know, I'm pretty pissed off, but I'll let you take the lead and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think last time we saw you was when we talked about Cenk Uygur, right? Which is also somebody who can piss you off, although you were actually optimistic that he might be on the right. Douglas Murray may have set him on the right path.
Well, was I? Was I really? Or is this revisionist history? Because I feel like Douglas Murray gave him a tune-up, but people like him tend to be the type that, they pick a fight with you in a bar, you knock them out, they get up off the floor and they think they've won the fight. And so that's sort of the way guys like that operate. I don't know that he's going to change, but certainly there are people on the fence watching that debate who may have been beaten into submission. But that guy, nah, he makes money that way. He's too invested.
Yeah. Yeah, and speaking of people on the fence, maybe I'll ask right at the start if you value our content and think the people on the fence might get off the fence on the right side, having watched our content. Consider sharing it. Maybe consider sharing some of our other shows. I know today's show is already the title has pissed off some of the people who like what we do. Generally, the title is my title. Mark is not responsible for it. It is Netanyahu wants to lose in The Hague. So I'm going to start by saying, just generally speaking, Netanyahu, we've talked about him a lot here on the channel. I think he is a weak leader. I think he has always been a weak leader. He didn't want to go to war. He didn't. It was kind of forced on him because what are you going to do after an October 7th? In previous rounds, he always did the absolute minimum that he could get away with without being accused of letting Hamas get away with murder. The same is true here. This is why Israel didn't go on a serious aerial bombardment of Gaza on October 7th and October 8th. This is why Israel didn't respond in the north against Hezbollah. This is why we keep hearing from Israel, look, what can we do? The Americans won't let us. And this is why Netanyahu decided to even participate in the farce in The Hague and in a conversation about whether or not Israel is committing genocide, which of course, on this channel we've had our disagreements, but what we're not going to have is somebody saying, look, the Jews are actually the bad guys here and they are committing genocide, because that's a conversation non-starter. If that's where you stand away from me. That's my policy. Mark, your initial thoughts on this, maybe generally on Israel participating in the trial in The Hague.
I think it's utterly ridiculous. I don't think it should be, the Hague should be honored at all with this perspective. One of the things that I think makes people morally unclear about this is this concept of collective punishment, where they feel like all the Palestinians are not somehow engaged in this conflict and all of them should not pay. Unfortunately for the Palestinians, that's not the case. They are engaged in this conflict. They left civilization behind when they endorsed Hamas. The majority of them do. And Hamas went over the border into Israel and indiscriminately murdered 1,200 human beings and captured over 100 more. That is a crime against humanity. That is a war crime. Your acknowledgement that the Palestinian people are, in fact, a pathological society that endorses a pathological ideology, and that they need to learn that orienting themselves around an ideology that endorses genocide, and that's what it does. The charters of Hamas endorse the genocide of the Jewish people, will lead to your own destruction. There's just no way around it. It's an ugly thing. War is an ugly thing, but war is what the Palestinian people have chosen. If Hamas surrendered tomorrow, if the Palestinian Authority surrendered tomorrow, if the Palestinian people disavowed this ideology, that they want land, they want to push the Jews into the sea and annihilate them entirely, then peace would happen. They do not do that. And because they do not do that, they have chosen this path of war. Ankar Gate put it very well when he talked about this modern attempt to sanitize war. And he made it very clear for me that war is actually it's the end of civilization. You have chosen to use force. You've chosen not to persuade. And that has been the case for Hamas and for every organization that the Palestinian people has backed, every political organization, from the PLO to the various religious fanatics groups that they've backed. The case has always been not about persuasion, but about war, about violence, about using the retaliatory force of Israel against it in PR campaigns for people who are morally unclear. And this case in The Hague is just one more example of a sort of a moral contagion that is infecting the world. Listen, folks, war is hell. Sherman said that. There's no getting around it. But it was the Palestinian people that chose this course, and it's the Palestinian people that have to give it up unconditionally. They have to disavow Hamas. They have to say, we will no longer pursue this course of action, which is murdering Jews. You can't evade.
We've lost Mark at a important point in the middle of a sentence, but until we get him
A
back,
group of people.
yeah, Mark, we lost you for about 10, 15 seconds.
Oh, geez, where
At,
was I
at
in my
you can't
rant?
evade was the last thing that I
Yeah,
heard.
you can't evade the fact that the Palestinian people are supporting a murderous genocidal ideology, and they have to disavow it completely and unconditionally before you can give them quarter. That's it.
So, yeah, I would love the Palestinian people to disavow their way, their entire culture. The thing is, in lieu of that, what needs to be done is Israel needs to take military action that guarantees that they can't they can't live by their values, since their values are killing Jews. You mentioned Ankar Gate. Let me strongly recommend to anybody who hasn't been following his work. We try to provide clarity on this to the best of our knowledge. Ankar is one of the greatest living philosophers out there. Definitely check out his work on the Ayn Rand Institute YouTube channel. So there was a comment by Christian. I want Israel to win in The Hague, even if the UN is an immoral organization in the first place. So I'm a bit torn there. I think there would be kind of, in a sense, a positive in Israel not winning, exposing how evil and corrupt and morally bankrupt this organization is. The problem is, and this brings me back to why I chose this title, I do not trust Netanyahu. I think Netanyahu wants an out, and I think this is his out. He is going to say, "Look, we've accomplished a lot in this war. We've harmed Hamas infrastructure. We've destroyed most of the tunnels, but we're not living on an island. The world won't let us." I'm going to read something that viewers, regular viewers of the channel, are going to be annoyed by me reading because I've read it a few times. But this is a fantastic, if I may say so myself, tweet from at Razi Ginzberg on October 8th. The tweet goes, "The longer Israel waits before taking military action, the less legitimacy it has from the international community to do what has to be done. The complete destruction of Hamas and a full permanent reoccupation of what little is left of Gaza. Netanyahu knows this. Maybe that's why he's waiting. I still think Netanyahu, that's why he's waiting. I we had Yaron Brook on the show a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him, you criticize Netanyahu, who do you think should replace him? And he said something like, if you go blindfolded into the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, and you throw a dart in there, you're going to hit somebody who's better, which I kind of agree with, although there are actual mouthpieces of terrorist organizations there. But generally speaking, Yeah, Netanyahu's weakness is something that you wouldn't see, I think, even from the left of center parties, at least during the war and as in terms of how they fight the war. So Netanyahu is looking for a way out. I think this is his way out. Like I said on pretty much every show since the since October 7th and onwards. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong about everything. I hope Israel is has something up its sleeve. I hope we're going to see the actual military action tonight. I also know Netanyahu has a press conference right about now. Maybe he's saying, you know, now is the time. We've just destroyed Tehran, but I don't think so. Or better yet, I'm resigning. That would also be a good press conference. But no, I don't believe that that is the case.
Well, first of all, I don't think that losing at The Hague is going to expose them for the corrupt organization that they are. Just like all the UN resolutions against Israel doesn't really turn the international community against the United Nations. They just continue business as usual. If anything, it's a confirmation to those pro-Palestinian people out there, the pro-terrorist folks, the fake liberation movement out there, that they will use this as a vindication. They'll plaster it all over social media and use it as evidence against the crimes that Israel is committing. That's just the way this type of this pathotype of human being works. They don't introspect. They're not checked. They don't check their ethics. They're completely righteous in their errors, and they don't change when those errors are exposed. If anything, they double down. So I fully expect. I mean, there's a protest that's going to be going on as we speak in Washington D.C. A pro-Palestinian protest that's probably going to garner tens of thousands of idiots in the streets of Washington D.C. Calling for a ceasefire. Now, I think these people are moral midgets. I confront these people all the time online, and they say the same concrete bound things. They see pictures and a picture of a dead kid, horrible thing, yes, but they place the blame on Israel. They don't put they never they say Israel has to stand down. They don't say the Palestinians need to surrender. They don't say Hamas needs to surrender. They don't connect the dots that dead child is in that state because Hamas and the Palestinian people committed an act of war against a free and sovereign country, against a free and sovereign people, against a peaceful people. So so I don't have any confidence that defeat in the Hague will do anything for exposing that organization for what it is. And Netanyahu would have balls if he says, I refuse to acknowledge you as a legitimate organization. You have no say in the way in which we defend ourselves. And the same with the United States. The United States should have no say in the way in which Israel has to defend itself. And we know that there's just simply not the moxie on the part of the allied Western powers to actually take on the full threat. There's nothing. All I hear is evasion on the news. All I hear is the politicians saying we can't let this conflagration expand. And if we as objectivists say, well, it has to, because we know who the primary funder of these terrorist organizations are. We know who the moral promoter of these of this terrorism and this hatred of Israel is, and we know that the confrontation has to happen. But we're called warmongers for understanding that, of course, the conflict has to widen. It has to, if we want to end this evil permanently.
Yeah, so I'm with you on saying I don't recognize this court's legitimacy. The time to say that was before. It was, we're not going to participate. This is not a thing that we're going to take
Yeah.
part in. We're going to let South Africa lecture us about, South Africa, the ANC in South Africa, who has turned South Africa into a failed state and,
Murdering white farmers, appropriating their land, And before that racism, the racism of apartheid, you have absolutely no moral ground to stand on.
Yeah, and by the way, we've spoken about South Africa for the past couple of days. I mentioned the murder of white farmers, and somebody commented that it's not just white people who are suffering in South Africa. We have many viewers in South Africa. It's one of the top countries from which people view this channel, and which is a good sign. As I said yesterday, that there are good people in South Africa who are suffering from the ANC, and the ANC is spending its time lecturing Israel and becoming this sort of moral, megaphone of the worst elements in the West, the Owen Joneses who say, look at South Africa, look at the clarity of their claim of Israel's genocide. It's we were talking a lot about how the pro-Palestinian propaganda machine works. And yeah, you're right. They need the UN. They need this body where you can say, look, these are the experts. This is not us. It's not us saying it. We're looking at the experts, and we're looking to, people who understand what's going on. And yeah, they are all propagandists. They use sources like we talked about Al Jazeera a few days ago. Al Jazeera has UN people on to you know agree with the Al Jazeera host about how horrible Israel is. Um, so yeah, the right thing to do, and actually, just on the point of if Israel loses, then maybe it'll expose this organization. No, maybe the right way to put it is maybe Israel and the US will have no choice but to say enough is enough. At some point you have to hope that we're going to get to that point, at least with these international bodies, and say no more. We're not taking part in this. We're not funding this. You keep your organization and go do your thing without the sanction of the victim, as Ayn Rand called it. And of course, if the U.S. and Israel did this, some semi-free countries will join. Britain will abstain, as it usually does. But yeah, this needs to happen at some point, and I really hope that that point is we're coming nearer and nearer to that point.
Yeah, but you wonder if after decades of demoralization and breaking down Western civilization and educating successive generations of the youth that Western civilization is the font of all immorality and evil in the world, if they'll have the self-esteem to stand up in the face of this and actually do that, which they should. And what these PR campaigns are all about is decontextualization and the use of collectivism and altruism to guilt people into not fighting for themselves. So they take pictures as arguments, and then they rely on your investment in sacrificial ethics and in group ideology to guilt you into thinking that what Israel is doing is wrong when it isn't. It isn't. Israel has an absolute right to defend itself. Hamas and the Palestinian people have been declaring war against Israel for ages now. They've been committing acts of war for ages. Their ideology is genocidal. That requires Israel to go in there and show the Palestinian people that identifying with that ideology and acting on that ideology means total and absolute destruction. And when they learn that, perhaps they will separate themselves from that and learn to live peaceably with is the Israeli people. If not, I'm sorry, you're going to Allah.
Yeah, now on the point of what Israel is doing, whether it's right or wrong, I actually do think it's wrong, obviously for very different reasons. I think what's wrong there is that Israel, first of all, refuses to identify the enemy as it is, which is the Palestinian people and not one organization or another.
Because that's too easy that's easy for the PR machine of the Palestinians and the collectivists to claim, oh, this is collective punishment. They have a pocket full of bromides that they can throw out there to the world. And we have such a superficial culture out there now. They just attach themselves to the slogans and act as if those slogans are actual thoughts.
Yeah, and the problem with that idea is, Israel acts on that idea, and that costs lives. It costs lives of Israeli soldiers. It costs lives of civilians who are still being targeted. It really guarantees that Israel won't win a real victory, even if it does defeat Hamas, because the ideas will still be there. The innocent civilians, who are the people who overwhelmingly support October 7th, are still there. And this, we've spoken about how unprecedented this is in warfare. The idea that, a country attacks you and you give them food and medicine and fuel, the fuel that they use to keep the lights on in the tunnels through which they go and murder your people. I mean, so Israel participated in the farce, not just in the court. It's participating in the farce in how it fights its war. It participates in the farce in its entire PR campaign. It plays into the hands of its enemies. And this is very much in line with how the West now thinks of war. It's not unique to Israel, although I think Israel has taken it to a different level. But it also very much fits within Netanyahu's personality, his clear preference to keep his job no matter what. And by the way, the fact that that's even a possibility is terrifying to me and shocking. But
Look, I think
yeah.
I think this attempt to sanitize war comes from a a place of decency, in the sense that people saw the utter carnage of World War II and they wanted to do something about it. But it's a pragmatic solution, in the sense that it fails to understand what war is and why people end up going to war. And it ends up hobbling the decent and empowering the indecent, in the same way that anti-gun laws end up empowering the criminal and leaving the law-abiding citizen disarmed against a criminal element. Look, when a country attacks you, when a people attacks you, they have decided to throw off all the mores of Western civilization: rights, persuasion, respect for your human being, coexistence. All of that is gone. They've said, we are investing in using force against you as a means of taking what you have, or bringing you to our side. That's a gauntlet, my friend, that they have thrown down. And if you have any self-respect, and if you're invested in altruism, you lose self-respect by practicing that, because your ethics are about sacrificing yourself for something less than you, or not as virtuous as you. But if you do have any self-respect, then you have to defend yourself vigorously until the threat is over, until it's done, until there will be no more possibility for that threat to rise and hurt you again. And that will not be pretty. But it's not Israel's fault that they've been placed in this position. Decent people have to defend themselves and do things that are unpalatable in order to live. I don't want to, poke the guy's eye out that's trying to stab me to death, but I might have to, or I might have to kill him. I don't want to. It doesn't appeal to me, and I'm sure it doesn't appeal to the Israelis in the way that it appeals to the Palestinians. The Palestinians have built a culture of murder and suicide. That it's a culture of death, and people don't understand that. They either don't understand it or they're evading it. That it is an honor to murder Jews and to die in the process. There is no such equivalent movement in Israel. The IDF soldiers that are going in there will have to live with the consequences of their actions for decades to come. They're going to have psychological damage from having to kill people to survive. That damages you. But they've been placed in that situation by the Palestinians, who feel absolutely no compunction generally about harming people. They consider it a virtue. And to me, that's a difference. I don't know if you want to explore that a little bit, but that's a major moral difference between the societies that nobody seems to be talking about. Maybe you guys are talking about it here, but I don't hear it anywhere else.
Yeah, and on people not understanding that the Palestinians built a culture of death, I always separate between, somebody who's, it's Saturday, London, the streets of London are filled with people chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, which is a chant for the murder of all the Jews in Israel. And I'm sure there are some, in their teens, maybe early 20s, haven't thought this through, that doesn't excuse it, but it's in a different category than the intellectual leaders, the media, the politicians. They know that what they're supporting is a culture of death. You said that, you need to fight until the threat is over. The problem is, I think Netanyahu's fight is different from Israel's fight. The threat that he wants to be over is different. It's the threat to him losing his seat. Um, Thank you to our super chatters. Thank you, Christian. Christian says Helen Sussman is spinning in her grave. It's sad that South Africa didn't become the free rainbow nation it should have become after apartheid. Thank you, Bert, for the super chat. Bert says premature in criticisms of Netanyahu. Damn Hague. I don't think it's premature. I mean, we've been criticizing Netanyahu from for years. He's the longest serving prime minister in Israel. He allowed the conditions for October 7th to happen. He's allowing the conditions for the next October 7th to happen. If this is premature, when is going to be the right time to criticize Netanyahu? 100 years from now, when we talk about the state of Israel that was and how it was destroyed? No, Netanyahu is the leader. It's on him. The buck stops here. He doesn't have that slogan on his desk, but he clearly doesn't believe it. Thank you, Stephen, for the super chat. Thank you, Esther, for the super chat. Esther says, great job. Thank you, Gail, for the super chat. Gail says, evil evasion of reality caused the Holocaust. Yes, and one of the reasons we are covering this and nothing else is because it really is terrifying times that you struggle to fathom how this is happening with the relatively recent history that we should all know enough about to know that we should avoid. Uh, Thank you, Mini Mafia, for the super chat. I see that I think I couldn't see all the chat, but I see that we had some trolls in the chat, which is good because tomorrow we are doing the first ever episode of the reality show Extra. That is for YouTube members only. If you're not a YouTube member, you can become a YouTube member on the channel. It's $5 or pounds or euros, depending on where you are. And then you get access to other exclusive content. But Mark, we will be discussing should you feed the trolls, and we will be feeding the trolls, and the trolls are welcome to join if they feed us by becoming a member. And we will be reading some of our favorite trolling comments from YouTube. Mark, you have 500,000 followers on Twitter. I don't know how many of them are trolls, but I think there are some among them. There are people who seem to make a career out of trolling you. We'll read that. Mark, you are lifelong, successful Hollywood actor. I am just launching my acting career, as a uh, uh, what was it, defendant in the mock trials at ARCUK. So I will be reading those in dramatic voices, and you will be judging my acting. That show alone is going to be worth those $5 or pounds. So make sure you sign up if you want others to view it as well. You can gift memberships, and it will be randomly handed to some of the 145 members, people who are watching now live. The daily objective is back tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. UK time. That is, of course, for everybody. The reality show Extra is extra. It is behind a paywall. And platinum members and above, the Philosophy Forum starts in a minute. Mark, thank you for joining me. I'll see you tomorrow on the reality show Extra.
Thank you. And Israel, keep up the work. Do not surrender.